Well, I'm Donald Miller. I'm the Director of Programming for Waterloo Greenway. We're super excited you're here. This is our call for ideas information session. You've got a group of Waterloo Greenway staff and AIA partners here to kind of just go over the call for ideas content, answer some of your questions, and help you get prepared for that deadline for submissions next month. So we're happy all of you are here. I thought the first best place to start before we meet the team is to introduce Waterloo Greenway. For those who may not know, it's the whole reason Creek Show exists. It's what we're here to celebrate and highlight. But Waterloo Greenway is a 1.5 mile park system that stretches through downtown Austin from 15th Street all the way down to Lady Bird Lake. It is currently under construction and we're doing it in 3 phases. Phase 1 was completed last year, and that was Waterloo Park. If you came to Creek Show last year, we celebrated Creek Show inside of Waterloo Park. Phase 2 kicks off this year, and that's everything on the south region of our project down by Lady Bird Lake, from the lake up to Palm Park. We're super excited about that. And then phase 3 will go back and connect everything in the middle. By the time we're done, we'll have 1.5 miles of park systems, 35 acres of green space. We're super excited that our biggest partner in this project is the city of Austin. We're working with them to reimagine existing park spaces, build and design a series of geographical milestones through downtown with the goal of having it all done by 2026 to celebrate future programs, aspects, and different parts of the community. So we're really excited about that. If you don't know who we are, I definitely encourage you to get to know who we are. Part of the project assignment is to celebrate both Waterloo Greenway and Waller Creek. So if you don't know what Creek Show is, if you haven't been yet or aren't quite familiar, Creek Show is an annual event. It's Waterloo Greenway's biggest annual event. This will be its Ingrid 8th or 9th year. What year did we start? I know we skipped a year, so now I'm off.
Our first one was 2013, right?
20, that sounds right. So we've been going for almost 10 years, but the Creek Show was founded to kind of support and celebrate local artists and designers and raise awareness about Waterloo Greenway and the Waller Creek project at the time, which was very much in its infancy. Both the project and Creek Show have come a long way since then. The goal of Creek Show is to commission 6 light-based art installations along Waller Creek and invite the public to engage with those and inspire awe and wander the Waller Creek and really enjoy it. The best part of it is all of it is local. Every part of Creek Show, from the art to the musicians to the selection committee, we're all celebrating Austin, which is really unique and exciting. But none of this is possible without a very seasoned team, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Like I mentioned, I'm Donald Miller. I'm the Director of Programming for Waterloo Greenway, and for the past couple of years, I've been the lead producer for Creek Show. I'll let Ingrid Spencer introduce herself, and then Kevin Shaw on the Waterloo Greenway team.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Donald. My name is Ingrid Spencer. I'm the executive director for AIA Austin, which is the Austin American Institute of Architects and the Austin Foundation for Architecture. But before I came on board with those organizations, I helped to start Creek Show back in 2012. And I'm just really excited to see what it's become for the community and continue to be a part of this exceptional group of people doing this exceptional work.
And then Kevin Shaw's new to the team this year. I'll let him introduce himself, but just like many of you, this will be his first foray into Creek Show. And not only is he going to guide and lead you all, but he'll be learning along the way. Kevin, are you still on?
Yeah, sorry, technical difficulties hopping on, but now I'm here. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Shaw. Like Donald said, I am new to the Waterloo team, but I come from a long history of doing arts events in Austin. I used to do an event called First Night Austin here in town and transitioned into something called Austin's New Year, doing art installations for that. And for the last few years, I've been doing managing a home tour of unique and eclectic homes called the Weird Homes Tour. But am now stepping on to join the Waterloo team. Big fan of Creek Show. I have an iPhone filled with photos that I took from Creek Show installations and using that as my background and home screen. And I'm super excited to work with you all on this year.
Thank you. So now we've got the housekeeping out of the way. We've told you a little bit about who we are, a little bit about who Waterloo Greenway is, and a little bit about Creek Show. So we're going to spend the next few minutes going through the call for ideas. All of the information you're going to see in the presentation is available at creekshow.com with all the call for ideas information. But what we really want to do is kind of walk through that piece by piece with you, let you ask some questions, get some more clarity. And at the end, we can do a Q&A, really kind of get a little more specific on some of your inquiries. So as we go, if you have questions related to what you see on screen at the time, let's go ahead and ask those, but save questions that maybe don't directly relate to that topic at the time till the very end. And I promise we'll answer every single question you guys have before the hour's over. Sound good? Awesome. So Creek Show, great place to start. The goals of Creek Show, kind of how we're going to frame it as we look at our installations. The first main goal is to engage the public. That's why we do this. It's free, it's open to the public. We want to inspire awe of both the art installations and Waller Creek. We want to raise awareness about Waterloo Greenway. Like I mentioned, we're a emerging parks project through downtown. The park project is not going to get complete without support from every corner of the public, really engaging, not just to help build the parks, but once they are built, to utilize the parks and make them special. And we want to highlight Austin-based artists and designers. Like I mentioned, that's one of the unique parts of Creek Show is we are all local. Austin is full of talent, and the fact that we're able to continue identifying and elevating that talent year after year after year is super exciting. We meet new faces every year. And then again, to activate Waller Creek, if I haven't made it clear, the Waterloo Greenway project runs directly along Waller Creek and it's the heart of our project. So the basic installation requirements and criteria, and Ingrid, I did not mention, anytime you would like to interrupt me, please do so.
Hey, you're doing great, Donald. I don't need to interrupt you.
Thank you so much. So this is what what criteria we will put in front of the selection committee after you've submitted your ideas. This is the criteria they will use to evaluate each proposal. So I definitely keep this front of mind. The first is the installation has to be original and site specific. You cannot recycle an old installation or an old idea or piece of art from a previous show or anything like that. It needs to be completely inspired by Waterloo Greenway and Waller Creek and specific to your chosen site. It needs to be inspired by the Waterloo Greenway mission or the environmental aspects of Waller Creek. So you can go look at our mission, you can go look at the creek. I'm gonna put her on the spot because she's here right now, but a couple of years ago, Gretchen did an installation and it really took inspiration from some of the bridges along the creek and their architecture, and it was really fantastic. One of my favorite pieces of it is the use of uncommon materials in uncommon ways. I'm going to give another example.
Actually, I will interrupt. I think that's meant to say common materials.
Oh, use of common material. It is meant to say that. Thank you, Ingrid. So use of common materials in uncommon ways. I admittedly made this late last night. So something as simple as a shampoo bottle from a hotel. That was one of my favorites. They collected thousands of those and made a beautiful installation 2 or 3 years ago, and it was absolutely fantastic. One of my other favorites is lifeguard on duty, just the use of pool floats in the creek. And then, of course, I think we all remember DWG's night garden with just simple construction flags. So a little can go a long way with a little imagination. You must employ light as an integral part of the design. And when we say employ light, please don't just make it an afterthought. Shining a light on it or putting a bulb inside of it is not an integral part of the design. We are a light-based art show. Sustainable and durable design. We are a green organization, so we want to make sure as we're constructing things and looking at what we do, we want the materials to be sustainable, and we also need the structure itself to be durable. It is going to be outside for 10 nights. It must withstand the elements, and more importantly, it must stand the grabby hands of a bunch of 4-year-olds who are going to climb on it, pull on it, jump on it. Even adults who aren't always respectful of the fact that it's art. So keeping in mind, it does have to endure the elements and people. It has to be temporary, leave no trace. So as you're thinking about your installation and installing that, something that is not going to negatively impact the environment around the creek, no staking or drilling into the ground, no affixing to trees. After your 10-day installation, once it disappears, we need to know it was never there. And then the final one is kind of back to the sustainable, but environmentally conscious and sustainable. Find a way, I think last year Bioness was a really great one. Their entire installation was biodegradable. If you don't know kind of the message behind Sea Glow last year, which were the large agaves, they were able to potentially be repurposed into handbags or jackets based off the materials or anything like that. So really, how do we make it sustainable? How do we upcycle your materials? And then finally, the most important thing, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, is Creekshow is a design and build challenge. So as you're thinking about what you can do and what you'd like to propose, make sure it is something that can actually be executed within the resources that we have, being the time, being the finance, and being the quality we'd all like to see on the creek. Questions so far?
I see there's a question in the chat about attendance, both during COVID and pre-COVID.
Yeah, that's a great question. So pre-COVID attendance was, we estimated over the course of 10 nights, about 70,000 people. And then last year during COVID, we did have to limit attendance, both because of COVID and just the space itself. And we had just around 50 to 55,000 people, which was really great. So we hope to continue growing that. Some other criteria and considerations. Budget. Waterloo Greenway does provide a budget for your installation. It's a total of $20,000, a $5,000 honorarium for you and your artist team, and then a $15,000 material budget. You are more than welcome to put your honorarium towards your materials budget if you like. We definitely encourage you, as you're constructing your proposal and your ideas, to really do some research in advance about the cost of materials. Maybe, if you're not a light engineer and you need to employ light and you're going to have to get a vendor, take that into account. The budget does not change based off of your installation. Everyone receives the same amount. Of course, Waterloo Greenway cannot prevent you from adding your own funds to your budget, and you're more than welcome to do that. Please note, as you do that, there's not an opportunity to sell or elicit additional funds through sponsorships or on-site activations or exposure. So keep that in mind. And then your installation will not be given preference if you can put more resources behind it. Our selection committee, just because you potentially have more resources and more money behind it and a larger budget, does not mean it will be given larger favor. So we really like to see what groups can do within the budget. Insurance and indemnification. As we're talking about insurance, please keep in mind each installation is required to obtain and maintain general commercial liability insurance for the duration of Creekshow. You must have this by the time you load in, and it must be active until you load out. Don't let that scare you. If you don't know anything about insurance, we help you along the way, but just go ahead and, as you're thinking about your budget, keep that in mind. And then the other thing, as you're kind of putting together your teams, thinking about what you might do, Waterloo Greenway strongly encourages teams to embrace our shared commitment to equity. So thinking about a really diverse team of age, color, disability, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, all of that. All are welcome to participate at Creek Show. All are welcome to attend Creek Show. We believe that starts with the installations and those teams as well. So just something to keep in mind. Questions so far? Let's see.
Donald, I was typing an answer furiously, but maybe you can just answer this one out loud about electricity along the creek and
Yes,
outlets.
that is our next slide.
Mhm.
So the Creek Show 2022 site. So if you've been to Creek Show for many years before, you know it's jumped around sites and we explore new parts of the creek every year. Last year, it was inside of Waterloo Park exclusively. It was a great special addition to Creek Show. But this year we are interested in returning to the creek. There will be some integration of Waterloo Park into the overall event, but the art will happen along Waller Creek between 9th Street and 12th Street. If you've been previously, we've used this stretch of creek before, but this year we are stretching an additional block that bumps up to Waller Creek. So if you go explore Waller Creek, you go to creekshow.com and kind of look at our gallery of sites. You'll see we have an additional block and it ends at an existing chain link fence at 12th Street under the 12th Street Bridge. So there's a whole new block no one has ever played with before, and someone from this group will get the first opportunity to play with. If you haven't walked the creek before, I very much encourage you to do so. The stretch along Waller Creek is very different block to block, whether there's a tunnel or the distance from the creek or the depth of the creek is really unique. So definitely do that. All submissions we do prefer each submission designed to a specific area of the creek and recommend or propose a specific part. That doesn't always mean you get that, but it's definitely beneficial to have an idea of the specifics of the creek. So just kind of you understand how the audience will also use the creek. They will all enter at 9th Street and will participate in a linear one-way walking path. Visitors will not be permitted to leave the walking path. They will have to stay on the hardscape. They will not be able to walk through, enter, or touch many of the installations unless it's directly next to the path. This includes at Symphony Square. If you know where that's between 11th and 12th Street. It's where our offices are, and there's a little mini amphitheater right there. While an installation can certainly occupy that space, please note the audience or the visitors will not be able to walk up and interact with the space off the creek. So keep that in mind. Power along the creek is limited. We definitely spoiled our artists last year. They had 20 amps of power everywhere they looked. This year, you guys are going to have extension cords running 3 blocks through a window under Karen's desk, and you've got to hope she doesn't hit it with her high heel in the middle of the day or a vacuum in the middle of the night. Gretchen can attest to this. It is very limited. So as you're thinking about your installation, limited power capacity. So really get creative. Battery packs. Generators are an option. We don't love them necessarily because they're not always green and they're loud. So keep that in mind. And I think I saw this question in the chat, and I'm watching your questions in the chat go through, and I promise we'll get to all of them. But no drilling or staking into the creek. Sandbags, anchors, things like that are things you'll need to consider, and no attaching to trees. I promise you, the park arborist, it doesn't matter what you propose or how safe it is, they are not going to let you attach to a tree. So we'll just go ahead.
Did tension
attach to a parking garage?
Oh, then I'm wrong, everyone. Sorry, I answered that incorrectly in the chat.
Yeah, they attached to a parking garage.
Okay, no tree.
But they did propose a tree, so you're right at that point. So, Ingrid, so questions so far about the site. I do want to point out the walkway along Waller Creek, the sidewalk the audience will be on was designed in the 70s. It is not completely ADA compliant with the width it needs to be. I say that because it is very narrow. So keeping in mind when you design an installation on or near the actual walkway, we will want to make sure we keep the walkway as absolutely open as possible. So please consider that in your installation as well.
Donald, I'm going to ask you a quick question. So I understand that it's primarily along Waller Creek. Mm-hmm. Let me just confirm what you said. is there an opportunity to do an installation where the amphitheater is, where Waterloo Park is?
There is not this year. For the sake of the call for ideas, it will be limited to the creek.
Okay.
Any other questions before we talk about how to submit your idea?
There was a question about access being restricted during non-creek show times, but I believe you're not going to restrict access. I answered that there'll be 24/7 security.
That's a great question. So we are lucky in the fact that along the creek, there's not typically a lot of foot traffic during the day. During Creek Show, we do gate it off during non-Creek Show hours and have a 24-hour security guard walking the site. That certainly doesn't mean someone can't walk through the space, so we limit access. I can say in the time I've been here, we've never had an issue, but I think we all recognize that there are a population of people living along or around Waller Creek and downtown. They will move through the space throughout the day, but typically we found there's been a lot of respect for the installations, and our security teams have done a really great job of monitoring that space. But that raises a great point as you're thinking about your installations. We've had one Urban Scrim a few years ago had projectors. Based off of just the site, they brought the projectors in every night and reinstalled every afternoon. So keeping things like that in mind, as you may not want to leave things out overnight. So any other questions? Go ahead, guys.
Donald, I saw one question. I'm not too sure if you answered it. Are there any geographic limitations on who can submit? There's a attendee from San Marcos who wants to know
San Marcos
if he can.
So it's we consider the Austin region, so that Central Texas Austin region. So San Marcos would be eligible to submit.
Donald, someone asked a question about battery powered items, and yes, you can turn on and off. You can turn off your installation when time is up, and then turn it on again the next night. If
That is good.
Doesn't have to be running all day.
For sure, and we actually prefer that. So your installation will need to have some type of off switch if possible. We would like it to turn on just before the event every night and turn off. That helps us clear the space, and that also helps not attract individuals to the space during the day or overnight that we may not want in the space and you may not want in the space. So yeah, please be able to turn your installation on and off.
Donald, someone asked about insurance requirements. Is there a particular amount?
There are. We can post those on the website, but I believe it is 500,000 per occurrence and $1 million aggregate, or that's the other way around. I don't remember off the top of my head. As we chat, I can pull that up for us. Let's go ahead and do that really quick. I see a question about the flow rate of the creek. It is pretty steady and light. If you're not familiar, and you'll get a lot of information about this if and when selected, the creek is controlled by the Austin Watershed Department Waller Creek Tunnel. So unless there is a particular rain event, the flow of the creek and height of the creek will remain completely constant throughout Creek Show. The only time that has the potential to rise is if there is a rain event and they open the tunnel to alleviate some of the water. So your installations do need to consider rain events in their conception. If the creek does quote unquote flood, you potentially could need to remove your installation or make sure your installation is anchored and able to sustain a little bit of additional water flow. But given the new tunnel, we don't really experience flooding the way we used to. But in the event of an extraordinary rain event, you could have to remove your installation. But we'll go over all of that as we kind of do your installations with you and help move those along. But please kind of keep that as a consideration in your design. It'll either need to be something that can sustain heavy water or be removed in the event of heavy water. What other questions do we have at this point?
So in terms of perspective, you said that the participants are going to be able to go only in one direction from
Yes.
south to north?
They'll go south to north from 9th to 12th.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So your general commercial liability insurance needs to be written on an occurrence basis with a minimum coverage of 500,000 and $1 million aggregate. And there'll be indemnification requirements for the city of Austin and Waterloo Greenway. Please do not let that scare you. We will help you take care of that. I have to do it with at least 3 of the groups every year. So we will point that out at this stage just so you can consider that in your budget requirements. Did I just, I think I just closed.
Somebody asked, I think I answered it poorly, about footprint requirements for the installation. There's no size requirement for the installation idea that you're submitting, but we're looking for high spectacle. So that will be taken into consideration when the ideas come in.
Yeah, and I think it's key to also talk about what we do mean by high spectacle. Can obviously be subjective too. Like there's obviously something like Sea Glow with the giant agaves last year, which were very high spectacle in a very large way. But you also think of something like DWG's Night Garden, which was high spectacle, but it was literally some lights and some flags. So high spectacle does not always have to mean high budget, high industrial, high fabrication. It can, so definitely keep that in mind. And I think our selection committee is looking at, and that goes back to the use of common materials in uncommon ways. The more uncommon you can use a common material is a spectacle. But to Ingrid's point too, we don't want something small. We want something substantial that will fill up a space and really engage the public. So I hope that better answers the question.
There's a question in here about whether earth anchor can be used to secure the installation.
So not in the creek. There can be absolutely zero anchoring in the creek. As we move, if you're looking kind of along the creek bed, I would say 90% of the time the answer is going to be no. But we can work with PARD to always put that question forward as we assess your installation fabrication during the process. But I would plan for it always to be a no.
I think that's all the questions.
Perfect.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
When we submit our ideas, should we have a specific area of the creek in mind?
Yes. We definitely prefer you to have a specific kind of location to submit, but we are kind of curating a comprehensive show over the 4 blocks. But just because you propose one site does not necessarily mean that's the site you'll get. And it could also mean, and Gretchen is another great example, she proposed a certain bridge that just was not available in the site because we moved sites, but she was able to adjust her design and her installation to better support the site she was given, and it worked out beautifully. So as our selection committee is assessing installations, if they really love an installation, but it just can't fit in that site, or there's a conflict or something else is going there, we'll definitely reach out and be like, hey, can we reimagine it and potentially this site? And that's something that probably happens every single year with more than one installation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish these last few slides, and then we're going to go into our Q&A just so we don't forget about this stuff. And anyone who wants to drop off after getting the information can do that. So to submit your idea, please do so using the online form at creekshow.com. Please don't email us your submissions. We won't see them. They won't get considered unless it goes through the form. Submissions are due at midnight on Friday, March 18th. They must be submitted in a single PDF file sized 8.5 by 11. There is no page limit, but please be concise. We don't need a 20-page proposal. I think we can always do it in 5. Some of the things we want to see in that proposal, a team or company name. Who's building this? Who's on this team? So let's go ahead and get a team listing and biographies, and go ahead and list a team lead. Who's leading your team? Who's your point of contact? And we want to know about your team. Share some accomplishments, some collaborations you've done. We want to kind of get to know you through the process. A title of your proposed installation. If you don't have one, that's fine. We'll work with you to get one, but let's give those some strong identities. A statement of intent. This is really where you get to shine. Describe the inspiration for your piece. Relate it back to Waterloo Greenway, Waller Creek. What story is it telling? How's it bringing in the natural elements? What are your uncommon materials? Articulate the design's relationship to the site. Are there interactive features? How will you do this? Really explain it to us. 2 sentences usually aren't going to cut it here. And I think this would be my piece of advice. We never see bad ideas. We only ever see incomplete ideas. So make your idea complete so we can get your vision and help you bring it to life. So that would be a piece of advice I'd give. And then visuals. We want to see as best you can represent what you're talking about or what you're describing. We understand not everyone can create a rendering or create something large and graphically perfect, but give us the best idea you can, whether it's a drawing, a diagram, a picture. We'd really kind of love to see what you're describing. And then we're asking for a lot. So please don't feel like you need a solution to every detail, every problem, every piece of the installation. We simply want to see that you have an understanding of the construction, fabrication, materials, budget, and site constraints. The more you can articulate that, the more likely it is you'll succeed. And then timelines and milestones. As a reminder, call for ideas ends March 18th at midnight. Over the month of April, our selection committee will review and select our finalists, and those artists will be notified in May. Artist teams will undergo monthly meetings June through October. So you'll meet with our team each month. That's me, Ingrid, and Kevin. We'll collaborate as one large group to curate the show, help you along the way with the process. We'll meet with city stakeholders. We'll help you identify power. We'll help you work through the challenges of your installation. And then November 7th through the 10th is artist load in an installation. That's when we start providing 24-hour security along the park or along the creek. That's when we help get the creek cleaned up and you can really start installing. And then we open Creek Show to the public on November 11th. It's 10 nights. We do ask, as you're planning, to go ahead and plan to have someone from your team at Creek Show each night. If your installation fails or there's a hiccup, we always need help getting your installation back up and going because no one knows your installation better than you. And then we give you the day after Creek Show to help clean it up. This is that moment where we leave no trace, and it is absolutely magical to watch Creek Show disappear. Like, it takes us days to put it up and then it almost disappears in a blink of an eye, which I think is just absolutely cool. And then you'll see a picture here of kind of the collaboration, the collaborative process. And part of Creek Show is also an artist talk. We give you the opportunity to talk about your experience with the public during Creek Show. So as you're doing this process, even from right now, from the call for ideas, document what you're doing, the lessons learned, the challenges, things like that, because it makes for really great stories at the end of the year. And then I know we probably still have a million other questions, so throw them at us. We've got, Ingrid and I have both been doing this for years. Ingrid's been doing it longer than anyone, and we even have some experienced Creek Show artists who have utilized this section of the creek before. I think Gretchen would not mind if we put her on the spot at all.
Happy to answer questions where I can.
So I see one question from Caroline is, do you need a budget for the first idea round? We do not need a budget. You do not have to submit a budget with your submission. We just ask that you keep the budget limitations in mind. We really don't want anyone proposing an installation that they're not going to be able to do because they didn't take budget considerations into effect. Who are the jurors? We have impaneled a group of local artists, landscape architects, art enthusiasts, former Creek Show artists, to judge Creek Show this year. It changes every single year. The only person who is consistent on it is Miss Ingrid Spencer as our artistic director. Can we do water slides? I'm sorry, Adam, we cannot do water slides. But that sounds like an absolute blast. I see the draft budget. A draft budget is not due. Oh, thanks.
That was
Ingrid.
me.
Yeah.
And you'll announce the jurors at some point when we finalize them, right, Donald?
Yeah, so we'll put the jurors on the Call for Ideas website when they're finalized, and we've gotten all of their thumbs up. What other questions do we have? I know y'all got them.
I mean, you could do a water slide as long as it's not people sliding down it into the creek.
I mean, that's actually a really good point. So yeah, so also that is one thing that, we've seen great ideas of over the past. How interactive can we get with the public? I would encourage specifically along the creek, we're not against interactivity with the public, but consider this is a very linear path. So someone has to stop to interact with your installation, walk through it, pick up a phone. That really does stall everything happening behind it. So really think of the attendee experience as we're doing this too. We know people are going to stop and take photos. You guys are creating amazing things. We certainly want that. But I don't think we want to create something that's going to really, that an individual experience every time. And also consider, insurance as well. The more interactive your installation is, the more engaging it is, the higher your insurance is going to be, AKA budget. What other questions do we have?
Will the pieces be in the creek or are there areas near the creek? Donald, I didn't look at the site, but do you have like images of the different spots available?
Go to creekshow.com. We have a gallery that walks you through the Creek Show site from 9th Street all the way up to 12th. So I would encourage everyone to look at those. In some places, it obviously makes much more sense to put the installation in the creek. And in some places, particularly the tunnels, they would obviously be along the walkway. So it really depends on the space and the installation. As long as the walkway remains clear, we are in good shape. But if you do install into the creek, please, again, the community and the visitors will not be able to leave the walkway to go interact with your installation on the creek bed or in the creek. Is there a gallery of past projects? Yes, ma'am. Or yes, sir, I apologize. Creekshow.com, you can go back and look each year. You can look at the rendering they proposed and got selected with, and then the final project they were able to curate.
They're asking for Gretchen to give a little overview of her project, past experience, biggest challenge. Gretchen, what do you think?
And be nice. Don't mention me as the biggest challenge.
So Donald was a true problem. I'm just kidding. You're amazing and so helpful. You just held everything together. So Donald is a huge resource during the installation. One of the biggest challenges was anchoring, because we had a very large installation that was essentially a bridge that went over a very small path that was, I think, 27 feet long, and it went about 30 feet into the air as well. So, and of course, without leaving a trace. So we tried sandbags and ended up doing large concrete blocks that we sunk our steel poles into to keep them anchored. And then on the other side where it was grass, we used essentially a ground anchor screw to guy wire into a steel post and keep it anchored that way. And so everything would be steady and it wouldn't move back and forth. Power is also a consideration. Just make sure you have backup. And I think our power was tied into the Sheraton Hotel. And when their outside lights automatically went off, our installation automatically went off on the first night. So there's just some things that happen as and any large interactive art exhibit might be. So you just kind of have to be really flexible and go with the flow and know that things will go wrong and just roll with it.
Yeah, that's a really great point too, especially with the power. I know one night, even on Gretchen's year, the city came by and decided to turn off a breaker box, so they didn't understand why the creek was so bright. No one gave them the memo that creek show was happening. So a city utility person drove by, turned off a breaker box, and put a padlock on it and kept driving. So we had to get a tool, cut the lock, and flip it back on. So. That's really great. I see a question about a stage for your install. I'm not sure what's happening on your stage, but if you're asking if you can build a platform over the creek, it's not really a yes or no answer. It really will depend on your installation. We have built a platform over the creek once, and that was for Lighthouse. If you want to go back to 2019 and look at their installation, they were required to jump through some additional hoops with permitting with the city. So keep those in mind as you do that. Once Waterloo Greenway selects your installation, it will also still be subject to a city review. If they deem you need additional permits or building permits, they're going to share that with you. Sometimes that can be too burdensome or time consuming based off of the city schedule, and you may have to readjust. So keep ambitious pieces like that in mind. I don't want to say no, I just want to caution you. You do not need to itemize your budget for the submission. And again, you do not have to submit a budget. We just want you to consider the budget in your submission. So obviously if you propose, a giant 18 projector installation with air and fog and all of this, we're going to ask some questions about how you're funding all that.
Quick question, Donald. So obviously the budget is based on $5K for the honorarium and then $15K for the actual installation. But do you reimburse people, or do you actually buy supplies for them?
Great question.
How does that work?
So what we do is that we provide your honorarium in two parts, one at the signing of your agreement and one at the very end of Creek Show. And then for the remaining $15,000, you get that in 3 installments along the way. So you'll get 3 $5,000 payments over the course of June through October. And those payments will be based on milestones you hit as you go along. So once you have a budget finalized and we have a great proposal for you and we feel confident in it, that first meeting you'll walk away with $5,000 as we kind of move you a little bit longer. So we pay you the money directly, you buy your materials. Don't let that process scare you. I know, sometimes we have individuals who don't always have the capacity or the additional funds to kind of proactively fund things along the way and get reimbursed. We can work with any group or entity to make your financial situation work. We average between 40 to 60 entries a year. Some years we get quite a few. I think we had 58 or 59 last year, and we've had as few as 30 some years. So we'd love to see 100 this year or more. So the more ideas, the better.
Carolyn,
more than one idea. Sorry.
Carolyn's asking about a screw anchor. Gretchen mentioned a screw anchor.
I think Gretchen put the pole in a cement casing and dropped it into the creek. So it was all self-sustaining. There was no interaction with the creek bed.
That's correct. We created large concrete footings essentially, and had our plate that we fixed the poles into in the creek. And then on the other side, we needed to have a guy wire, but could not use a ground anchor screw. So we did the same kind of thing on the other side to stabilize it vertically, and also to keep it from swaying back and forth with a guy wire that was put into what essentially would be a ground anchor screw, but a giant concrete footing that was removable, not dug into the ground, just one that we built offsite and then brought in.
So yeah, so overall, I would say please, and 99% of all situations do not plan to be able to screw into the bank, into the creek, into the ground behind the creek. Have an alternate option. We can always go back and ask with the city, but 99% of the time, again, it's a no. So is your background or portfolio considered during the selection process? We definitely read those, but we have definitely accepted many a group who have limited experience. We've accepted student teams before. Last year, we accepted a brand new artist who had recently moved to Austin. So we consider a lot of different factors when we select Creek Show artists, and make sure we have a diversity of experience and portfolios as part of the show each year. And Ingrid could probably better answer that question as well too.
Well, like Donald said, this is a build project. It's not just an idea. We have to know that you're going to be able to actualize and not, get it to be smaller than what you propose. So if the team that you're showing us, that you're talking about, has experience and has some things in their back pocket that they've done in the past, that is considered. But certainly it's the idea that we really are looking for, something really special.
You don't ever have them done something like this before, but you probably need to display some type of skill set to accomplish it for the first time. I think that's.
Or maybe you're teamed up with somebody who has, or who knows how to do it, how to actualize something.
Or even if you don't have the strongest background or team in that, we've had some groups who have, partnered with fabricators to really help kind of create, and that's definitely a route to take as well too. So consider that, but again, that's something you'll want to share in your submission. What is your path to success? What other questions do we have?
Is tomorrow's meeting much the same? If we attended tonight and got all the information, do we need to attend the Zoom call tomorrow at noon?
Nope, tomorrow's meeting is exactly the same. We just wanted to provide two opportunities for people who may be on two different schedule types.
Great. Thank you guys for your time.
Of course.
Thank you. Can't wait to see what you submit. Gretchen, someone's wondering what's up with your dog.
She's a little really crazy. This is Clover. Clover, say hi. No, she's not going to say hi. This is her little bed that she makes up on top of my bed. She's my office mate and best friend.
Aww.
Ingrid, do you have any select pieces of advice for either the submission process or the actual kind of Creek Show fabrication process that we could give these individuals?
See. I mean, it seems to me that some of the most successful installations have really had an idea that goes from point A to point Z. You really have thought out how this is going to show and what the impact will be. So think about impact and somehow let us know what that will be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think I alluded, like, we've seen a lot of great ideas come through in the submission process, but it was like the seed of an idea, not quite the rest of the way. And like, we were left asking, we want more. And sometimes we can pick up the phone and get some of those details, but like, once we call, if you haven't thought about it, then we're not getting that information anyway. So really, really think about that. Like, provide a complete idea, which is really great. And I'll also say too, one thing, we see a lot of great ideas that come through as well, but don't relate back to the Waterloo Greenway mission or Waller Creek. It's something that could be picked up and placed anywhere. It really needs to be unique and original to Creek Show, to Waller Creek, and Waterloo Greenway.
And we want to delight people, we want that wow factor. I mean, gosh, who doesn't need something to make them happy and delighted these days? Creek Show will do that.
For sure. It's my favorite time of year.
Mine too.
Also my most dreaded time of year.
Yeah.
What other questions do we? I see we still have most of you are still with us. That's really exciting. Gretchen, do you have any pieces of advice that you'd like to impart?
The most important thing I think is something will go wrong, and keeping your head about you and staying cool and just rolling with it and having solutions in your back pocket is just the key to enjoying it. And you will enjoy it. It's really fun. It's really stressful, but make sure to just roll with the punches and be flexible and keep an eye on your budget.
And then I'll pick it. We have a great team that is with you throughout the entire process, every step of the way. So don't be intimidated by the process. I know we're sharing a lot of information today. It's drinking from a fire hose, but that's just to kind of prepare you. And step one is really the submission process and the idea. So start there. Think that through. And I brought this back up on screen that this is the slide you should look at most. This is what our selection committee is going to consider the most, right here.
Except for the uncommon material.
Except for the uncommon. I'm so sorry, guys. And then
Something else I think was important and a good takeaway from me was that there's other artists and installers of many disciplines who are there also. So while you're all designing and building and coming up with solutions, work together and be collaborative with each other. It's a really fun experience, and you learn so much from other people. So don't be afraid to ask the other designers and artists questions, because they want yours to be successful as well. Everybody wants to be successful. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
I think that's a really great point, is you're in a room with the resources every single time. And a lot of times we see people really take advantage of that. And sometimes we don't. So it's really great to have that experience as well. I see we have another question. Do we need to be on site all 10 days in case something goes wrong? We do encourage you to be on site all 10 days. There are a few nights you are required to be there. It will really depend on your installation. If it's something you've got set and it's on a timer, things like that, then we're okay. But you need to have a plan. We require you to have a plan for every single night. So in the event something does go wrong, the city turns it off, whatever it is, there's someone nearby to help facilitate the operations of your installation. So it's a yes and a no. But who wouldn't want to be at Creek Show all 10 nights?
Mhm.
We've got a new concert every night. We've got food, we've got drinks, we've got dancing, we've got art. Where else are you going to be?
And I have heard from installation artists that just the joy of watching people interact with your installation is like nothing else.
It's really great. And then, so we will also have to we will also have Waterloo Park activated again. So while we are returning to the creek with the art, we will still have the concerts and the concession stands and the merchandise and the family zone and all of those fun things still happening at Waterloo Park. So that'll still be an experience the attendees get. We're not taking anything away. We're just focusing on the art on the creek because that's what the public loves. And I think that's where the best story is. Any other questions? Yay. We're at time. So if you have any additional questions, my email is on the Call for Ideas website, dmiller@waterloogreenway.org. You can certainly email us. Let us know if you have questions. Please note we cannot review or give feedback on your proposal ahead of submission. So we'll get a few of those. Sadly, we can't do that, but we can answer specific questions about how the installation can interact with the creek and questions about Waterloo Greenway. Other questions? If not, I'll do. Yeah, so the participating artists, I'm sorry guys, do get nightly access to the event. Typically you guys are there long before the public ever shows up. But yeah, there's no issue with you guys being at your installation. There's no waiting in line. And typically, if you bring your family or a guest, you just walk right in the front door. So that's not a problem at all. I see the question again. You can submit more than one idea.
But we'd probably only choose one.
Yeah, we'll definitely only choose one. So you cannot be on more than one team. And then if, as a reminder, if we have any leads here from previous years, you cannot be a lead on a team 2 consecutive years. You can participate as a supporting artist or supporting fabricator in consecutive years, but you cannot be a lead team member 2 consecutive years in a row. We like to provide lots of opportunities. All right, Miss Ingrid, you got anything else? If not, we'll let these people get out of here and go create some great ideas for us.
All right, great. Thank you.
We appreciate you guys spending your evening with us, and we look forward to reviewing your submissions.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks. Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Nice to meet you too, Ingrid.
Gonna be so fun.
I'm super excited.
Thanks, Donald.
Thanks, Ingrid. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Do it all, do it all again.
Sounds good.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. How do I close this?